Good evening and welcome to another edition of College Road Trip. It is our normal time slot on Wednesdays. Thanks to our special editions on Mondays, we are coming to you for a second time this week. Look who's back.
Ryan
Thies is back. Where have you been? Nobody knows where you've been. You kind of dropped off the face of the earth.
I had spring break. Went up to Door County for a weekend, Wisconsin. Enjoyed some wineries up there. Then went to Phoenix. Enjoyed some spring training games. And the warm weather and the sun.
And who did you go with?
I went to Door County with my girlfriend.
Okay.
But then Phoenix just by myself. I'm at family there.
Oh, you have family in Phoenix? Okay.
I'm from Phoenix.
Okay.
Newsflash.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it must have been. So you got to eat mom's hometown cooking, and you got to go to go see spring training.
I went to 3 spring training games. Wow. I went to Cubs Rockies first day I was there, D-backs Royals second day, and Brewers Giants.
I was going to say you live in Milwaukee now. You have to go see a Brewer game if you're down in. If you are down in Arizona. I just want to remind you, please, by all means, keep sending comments to our Facebook page right down below. If you have a comment, you want to talk to us, feel free to comment. We're happy to have Ryan back tonight. We are going to be talking about the Final Four with Nwka Asonye. He is our new correspondent for NCAA basketball. I just got used to saying Ryan Thies. Now I got to say Nwka Asonye. But we're efforting him as we speak. He's going to be coming on our show and talking NCAA basketball, breaking down the Final Four of this coming up weekend. And just a reminder that we are going to have a special edition of College Road Trip on Monday, a national championship edition. We are bringing the panel back. We are bringing Jeff, Dominic, and also, as we are efforting Nwka, as we are bringing Jeff, Dominic, and Christian all back. We had them on our show to start off the NCAA tournament, and we're going to bring them back to talk about the national championship. We're excited about that.
Yeah, it was great time, fun time having them all on. It was great to get them all together. Kind of felt like they were in studio here with us, just having previews of the brackets that we thought were going to be good at the time.
None of them worked.
Yeah,
absolutely none of them worked, and I know I'm gone. My bracket's done. It's been busted. I think Jamie's still okay though. Yeah. Is she still number 1? No, she's number 2 now. Okay, well,
but the same thing
congratulations to Jamie Evers.
Happens every year. Is the first 2 days it's pretty chalky.
It's awesome.
So and you're like, yeah, I'm feeling good, confident about this. And the Sweet 16 kind of goes down. And you take a few hits there, and then the Elite 8 is just where it always goes awry for me.
Yeah, it went into the toilet pretty quick for me, too. But we have a lot to get to today. We are going to be talking about, as we said, the Final Four with Nwka Asonye, and we are going to be also talking about the All-American selections that came out earlier this week, as well as the NBA draft. We have we have a lot of mock NBA drafts out there, especially talking about the guys that are still in the Final Four. Where do they rank? Does that really matter where they rank? But first of all, we want to give you a little bit of a history lesson. So we're going to go down memory lane. 35 years ago today, this happened.
A 1-point lead for Georgetown. No, they stay in the 1-3-1 with Ewing in the middle. They've got to look to get it in there. You can't with a shot blocker like Ewing take so much time. Doherty to Black. The time, 18. Shot, Jordan. Michael Jordan. 14 seconds. Brown. Look for Sleepy Floyd. Look. Oh, he threw it to the wrong man. He threw it to Worthy. It's over. It's over. He's fouled by.
And there was your birth of Michael Jordan. Everybody knew about Michael Jordan after. That was the start, and what a game that was. North Carolina, Georgetown, and just absolutely fantastic game. And like we said, Michael Jordan putting himself on the map as a freshman in 1982 in North Carolina. Yesterday, though, we had the anniversary of the shot, and we're going to take a look at that right now.
I've seen Duke do in the past in situations like this is try for the quick pass to half court and call a quick timeout so they can get in better shooting range.
There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
And there was Christian Leitner with the shot, 1992, Duke, Kentucky. What, you gave me a fun fact right before we went on the air today. What did you tell me about?
I asked you how it felt that happened 3 years before I was born.
And I told you, how does it feel that I was born 4 years before the Jordan shot? So you can just tell how different we are in age. But Christian Laettner, probably the greatest shot or the most, I don't want to say the greatest, but the most memorable shot in college basketball history.
What I can't get over on how they can throw it the length of the court right to Christian Laettner, and then the clock at 2.1 starts there. He can take a dribble and then still turn around. And still turn around and get the shot off in time. It just, when you're looking at it, you're like, no way he gets it off. That's longer than 2.1 seconds. But the video shows.
Yeah, it actually started on time, even though Rick Pitino and a couple of the other guys, Jamal Mashburn from those Kentucky teams, were saying, you know what, I think the clock operator was a little bit biased towards Duke, but that was Duke on their way to their second of 2 back-to-back NCAA titles, and man, what a fantastic finish that was. And I remember watching that one live. I was in 8th grade at that time, and I watched that one live, and that was just so much fun. But speaking of Kentucky fans are not endearing themselves to the national public right now. We had word, and I'm sure this got talked about. I know this got talked about earlier today here on Bruce Sports, but NCAA referee John Higgins, who was one of the referees for the UNC Kentucky game, has been getting death threats from Kentucky fans. And he worked the Elite Eight game between Kentucky and North Carolina, and that was the shot where Luke May actually hit the shot. That's why we bring up these shots. And Coach John Calipari kind of fueled the fire by saying post-game, it's amazing we were in that game. They practically, considering they practically fouled out my team. Well, besides Calipari and besides the Kentucky fan websites and message boards, Kentucky fans just became incensed and enraged, and they ended up calling John Higgins at his business and threatening him, and not just with physical harm, but, even with death. That is just amazing, and for Coach Calipari is to kind of fuel that fire. He actually quelled the fire a little bit by sending out a tweet saying, "I always brag that we have the classiest fans in the conference or in the country. Let's make sure we remain that way even after a tough loss." But what do you say about Kentucky fans? And we live amongst Green Bay Packer fans, which are the most rabid in the world. I'm a season ticket holder. I know about Packers fans, but would we ever threaten death on somebody?
No,
literally?
In no way, shape, or form is that ever acceptable to take someone or threaten someone's life over a sporting event. Yeah, it's a big deal for Kentucky fans. They love their basketball. They love all their sports, but
there's not really much else going on in Kentucky, is there?
Yeah, besides death threats.
Yeah, exactly.
But you just can't do that. It's unacceptable. Okay? Can't do that.
Well, and one thing that I couldn't believe is the vice president of the NCAA said that we appreciate the passion that the fans bring to college basketball. Yeah, that's passionate, all right. But the behavior of some fans towards John Higgins has been reported publicly after last weekend's regional final is not appropriate, and we totally get that, and we accept that, and we understand that. So
it's a small number as far as the Kentucky fan base goes, but it's still going to ruin it for everyone else. You don't want to be the group of people that really tarnish the look on University of Kentucky fan base. Because ultimately they are a good fan base. Most of them are good fan bases, but the few sour eggs that can get in there and ruin it for everyone.
I wonder if Ashley Judd was the one that made the death threats. Never know.
Highly doubtful.
Highly doubtful.
Highly doubtful.
One thing that I want to talk about before we bring on Nwka Asonye, our NCAA correspondent, is the veteran presence of these teams. You have a lot of Kentucky. We call Kentucky one and done university. A lot of these kids come in for a freshman year and they leave. But here in the Final Four, you have Sindarius Thornwell, who's a senior, SEC Player of the Year. Justin Jackson, who is a junior at North Carolina. Dylan Brooks, who's a junior. Nigel Williams-Goss, who's a junior for Gonzaga, actually went to Washington and sat out a year and came back and played for Gonzaga when he actually probably could have gone to the NBA, but probably would have been an undrafted free agent. But it's amazing to see, all these kids come in, I want to get to the NBA, I want to get to the NBA. But what makes the NCAA tournament intriguing is the people that stay are the ones that actually make it to the championship.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if that's going to change the recruitment styles of coaches, because I know you want to get the high school recruit, but is he going to stay around? Is he going to only be there for 1 year? And you have to weigh the differences. Yeah, if the best high school recruit's going to be there for 1 year, you got one great year, or you can get someone a little bit lower that's going to be there for 4 years and have some leadership and get you into a Final Four, as some of these leaders that we've seen here. And I want to touch on Justin Jackson, too, how much he has improved over the last year. I saw him last year in the CBE Classic in Kansas City, and he was behind Joel Berry and Marcus Page at that time, and now he's really transformed himself into the top player of this North Carolina team.
And just to see his leadership and the things that he can do, he has improved his game so much. And like we said, Sindarius Thornwell, he wasn't the SEC Player of the Year for nothing. He was a leader on that team, and he's led this team to the Final Four. Dylan Brooks, we all know from Oregon, is just a fantastic basketball player, and we'll talk about where those guys might end up after we as we wrap up the show, as we talk about the NBA draft. But we want to bring in our newest correspondent, Nwka Asonye. Nwka, thank you very much for joining us. Like I said, I've been having trouble with Ryan's name, and now I got to get to know your name too. But thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. This is I'll tell you what, this is the best time of year. I don't care what anybody says. This is the best time of year.
Absolutely. What was your takeaway from the Elite Eight this past weekend? What was your ultimate takeaway, and what was the best thing that you saw this past weekend?
Well, first of all, Kentucky fans get away with everything under the sun. It's like every year that Kentucky doesn't win a championship, we have to hear about their bad behavior or passionate or whatever excuse that people come up with for them, that is, nowadays. But I think the best part of the weekend was watching South Carolina get to the tournament. We already knew that Florida had a pedigree, even with the second-year head coach in Michael White. But Frank Martin, he left Kansas State acrimoniously, then builds South Carolina basketball from nothing. I mean, if you can name South Carolina basketball's best basketball moment before Frank Martin came on campus, I'll give you $100 right now. And without him, I don't think any of this happened.
I just want $100, so I'm trying to think. I'm thinking I might have to Google that one time. What was that the biggest surprise for you from the weekend? Was South Carolina, or what surprised you from this weekend?
I think South Carolina was the biggest surprise. Aside from that, everyone else is surprised that Gonzaga was actually making it to the Final Four. Everyone seemed shocked because, they're the weakest one seed, this, that, and third. But we have to remember, they were a 1 seed. They were in chalk. They were actually supposed to get here, and they were only one of the other 1 seeds to actually get there.
Right, and everybody was bagging on Mark Few being this coach that couldn't win the big game and stuff like that. It's not Mark Few's fault. He ran into a couple of
juggernauts.
Yeah, exactly. He ran into a couple of juggernauts that he couldn't get past, and it wasn't his fault. He's had the teams. It's just that, unfortunately for him, the last couple of years, he just ran into those buzzsaws. But now this year, I think he's wanting to prove a point. But who has the most pressure on him? We've talked about Gonzaga being a number 1 seed. Is the pressure on Gonzaga, or is the pressure more on North Carolina, who was in this position last year?
I think the pressure is more on North Carolina. When you lose a game like you did last year, which has got to go down as one of the best NCAA basketball championship games of all time, you bring mostly everyone back, and you want to prove that, forget that shot, we're here to stay. And they're seen as a heavy favorite because the rest of their competition is Gonzaga, an Oregon team who I think really overperformed after losing Chris Boucher. And then, of course, everyone's favorite Cinderella, the South Carolina Gamecocks. So I think most of the pressure is on North Carolina coming into this weekend.
Who is the most intriguing matchup between the two semifinals here?
I think that Gonzaga, South Carolina is the most intriguing because, first of all, one of them is going to go to the NCAA tournament final game. I can't believe I'm rambling that on. For the first time in program history. One of those other teams will have a coach who's going to his first national championship game for the first time. in his career. And to make matters even more appropriate, I would say, either way, no matter which one of them wins, they're going to be the underdog. And we always love a good underdog story. The question is which one we get Monday night.
Talking to Nwka Asonye. He is our NCAA basketball insider, and we appreciate him joining the show. If you have a question for him or you have a prediction for us or something that you want to talk about, please feel free to comment here on Facebook Live. We appreciate everybody joining us. Now, Nwka, we talked about the matchups between the teams. Who's the most intriguing player against player matchup?
Oh, man. I like Dillon Brooks versus Justin Jackson.
It's a good one.
You're talking about the ACC Player of the Year versus a Pac-12 player who, let's face it, after they knocked off UCLA, you thought that Oregon was going to absolutely be that team. They were going to come in as Pac-12 champions, and they almost did. But people forgot about Dillon Brooks after Ennis went off in the Elite Eight matchup. But I think that matchup, because they are both similarly built, Jackson's about 6'9", Dillon Brooks is 6'7", and they both play increasingly important roles on the offensive end. If Justin Jackson doesn't score, I don't care who else you have around you, North Carolina is going to have a tough day. And I don't care how many weapons Oregon has, Dillon Brooks makes them go. So watching those two go head will be a lot of fun.
So would you say that Dillon Brooks is going to be the X factor going into this semifinal matchup?
I think without a doubt, especially if Ennis continues to play the way he's playing. He sort of picked up Dillon Brooks because Ennis, yes, he scored over 20 points his last game, but Brooks has been remarkably quiet. Expect him to go off, and then Oregon has a shot to go to the national championship game. But that's if he goes off.
Let's take a look a little bit closer at this South Carolina-Gonzaga game. You have Sindarius Thornwell against Nigel Williams-Goss. You know Sindarius Thornwell is going to be playing against Williams-Goss. They're both veterans, both very good players, both going to be drafted hopefully fairly high, although Sindarius Thornwell is projected very low in the second round. What's going to be the matchup there? Is Thornwell going to be able to knock Williams-Goss off his game, or is it going to be an equal matchup there?
I think it's going to be pretty equal, and I don't even think that they're really even the biggest matchup. For me, I think the biggest matchup is Kotsar for South Carolina versus Karnowski of Gonzaga, because this is a game where the posts may not take center stage, but they're really important. Mm-hmm. When they feed Karnowski inside for Gonzaga, they expect a bucket or they expect them to go to the foul line. Kotsar only got 3 rebounds, but his activity on the offensive boards in general versus Florida was really part of the reason that South Carolina came away with the win anyway. So in my eyes, those two will be equal. They'll cancel each other out, but we have to look at the bigs for this one.
And that was one of my other questions, was how tough will Karnowski be to stop? He's just a huge presence. He's 7 foot. He looks like he's about 300 pounds. We know he's not, but very athletic for a big guy, and one of those guys that plays tough in the lane, and you wonder how South Carolina is actually going to stop Karnowski.
I would expect them to throw a few double teams his way. I mean, Kotsar is kind of tall, but he's nowhere near as brawly as Karnowski is. But what Karnowski is really good at doing is passing. Mm-hmm. Because what we need to understand as basketball fans is that when the ball goes in the post, gone really are the days of Shaquille O'Neal doing whatever he wants with the ball to finish. These days, the big isn't the end-all of the offense. He's part of the facilitating factor for the offense. And we saw Karnowski unleash a few really nice passes in the Elite Eight matchup. So I would expect South Carolina to throw a few doubles his way to see if maybe he's off his game passing. But the reason why Gonzaga is where it is because Karnowski has been able to handle the double team.
Talking with Nwka Asonye, our NCAA basketball insider. The last question I have on this matchup, is Carolina's defense going to be able to continue to hold good teams and ride that to a national championship? Everybody always says defense wins championships. Is that going to be the case for South Carolina?
To be honest, I have learned through the years, because I coach high school, what I have learned through the years is that good offense really does beat good defense. And that's not to say that effort doesn't matter, and it's not to say that the fundamentals of playing defense don't matter. But you still have to put the ball in the basket. You don't win with the number of stops, you win with the number of points. So what really needs to be evaluated is whether or not South Carolina can take advantage of the 50-50 balls, all the in-between plays that the defense will have to encourage. If they don't have those, I think it's going to be tough for them to win. Nigel Williams-Goss is dynamic. Karnowski can do pretty much whatever he wants. And what Gonzaga's done very well over the years is that even when there's one central player that's next man up, there's always somebody ready to take advantage. So I don't think South Carolina can win it on defense alone. They're going to need to make sure they turn those 50-50 balls into fast break points, or at least trips to the line.
Zach chiming in on Facebook saying, "Go Zags. I'm from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I have to root for the Zags. They're right down the road from me." He says number one defense, Zags SC defense number 2, and he said it should be a good defensive battle. But I know Ryan's got a couple of questions for you regarding the other matchup between UNC and Oregon.
Yeah, we'll switch over to the Tar Heels and Ducks here. They're two very athletic teams, just phenomenal to watch up and down the court, both sides. Very intriguing matchup with Justin Jackson specifically. But overall, there's 5 guys on the court for each team. Who's going to be more athletic throughout the entire 40 minutes here?
I'm going UNC. And part of that is because their starting lineup, it goes 6 foot with Joel Berry, then 6'8", 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". So they've already got the length advantage. But what I really like about North Carolina is that sometimes you see with athletic teams, they get a little bit lackadaisical defensively. Their hands aren't up, and they're always a step behind. That's not been the case with this North Carolina team when it's on. Oregon, they took a big hit with losing Chris Boucher, but I'll give them credit. I don't think anyone expected them to be there aside from themselves and most of everyone on the West Coast who says, you don't watch enough West Coast basketball. I really do think, though, that UNC has the athletic edge.
Now, Joel Berry has been kind of a strong leader behind Justin Jackson this season, but he's got some foot-ankle problems coming up. Do you think that's going to really damage Berry's output here in this game?
I don't think so. Part of that is because this week, I know North Carolina is definitely going to give him a chance to rest up, maybe do a lot more film work. We'll definitely be seeing the trainers a lot throughout this week. What also is going to matter is that once that adrenaline gets going, it doesn't really matter how much you're hurt. You'll do whatever you have to do to get through it. And I know he was there. He was a pretty pivotal player last year when North Carolina lost in the championship game. He's not going to let anything stop him. Not a chance.
Now, North Carolina is the favorite coming into this game, but it's March. Anything can happen. So what does Oregon need to do to win this game as the underdog?
In my mind, they need to keep the track meet to a minimum because we know North Carolina can really fly in transition. Even the game they lost to Duke in the ACC tournament, both teams went up and down, up and down, up and down. Oregon needs to get back. Whether the play is blown, whether it's a weak call, whatever the case may be, Oregon needs to get back defensively and make North Carolina run sets. Not because their sets are less effective, but you take away easy possessions from a high-flying team, and you have a better shot to win.
And I agree with Zach, who chimed in, and once again, he said Oregon is a fast, tough team, and they will give North Carolina a run for their money. One person that's really giving everybody a run for their money, Tyler Dorsey, he has been shooting lights out. Can he continue his hot shooting, or is he gonna hit a wall one of these days?
It's a lot of time for someone to really go to practice, look at film, and see what other adjustments he needs to make. I think it's going to be just fine. As we mentioned before, everyone else has been picking up Dylan Brooks anyway. So if Brooks can shoulder some more of that load, no reason why Dorsey can't keep doing what he's been doing.
Nwka, Final prediction: who's going to be in your national championship game, and who is going to be your national championship? I gotta ask you. And we're gonna bring you back next Wednesday, and we're gonna find out if you're right. So you better make a good prediction here.
Oh, great! Now the pressure's really on.
Yep. Yeah.
I like South Carolina a lot. I love their story. I'm a big fan of Frank Martin in general, through what he's gone through and the path he's taken to get here. I don't think he's got enough against Gonzaga, because I think Gonzaga's finally had enough of everyone talking smack. So Gonzaga's going to go to the national championship game. On the other side, North Carolina, I'm going to take them. Okay. Because North Carolina has seen enough. They've heard enough. An oral history of last year's game-winning shot was just put on the Undefeated's website, a great breakdown from both teams. And I think they've finally been waiting for redemption. So I like them not only to beat Oregon, but to edge out Gonzaga in the national championship game.
You heard it here first. He's our first prediction, Nwka. Thank you so much for all the information. We look forward to having you back on the show. Great insight. And once again, thank you for coming on. First time. We'd love to have you back.
Can't wait. Guys, thanks a lot.
All right. Nwka Asonye, thank you very much. Our NCAA, I wanted to say NBA insider, but our NCAA insider. He gave us some great stuff, as always, Ryan, and we appreciate him coming on. Now, I want to move on a little bit past predictions, because we're gonna have a little bit of time to predict, you and me, at the end of the show. So we're gonna take time at the end. The All-American teams were named this week. Frank Mason, Josh Hart from Villanova, Caleb Swanigan from Purdue, Lonzo Ball from UCLA, and Justin Jackson from North Carolina named the first team. Frank Mason III from your beloved Kansas Jayhawks, which I know you're absolutely head over heels about, was named a unanimous All-American and AP Player of the Year.
That's fair.
We look at the second team then in Nigel Williams-Goss from Gonzaga, Luke Kennard from Duke, Malik Monk from Kentucky, Dylan Brooks from Oregon, and Jonathan Motley from Baylor. Then finally, the third team, you have Josh Jackson from Kansas, Markelle Fultz from Washington, Bonzie Colson from Notre Dame, Ethan Happ from Wisconsin, and Lauri Markkanen from Arizona. Out of those three teams, and you have them right in front of you, I know both of us do, is there anybody that maybe should be up in the first or second team, or should be down? You can make an argument.
Yeah, it's
just
very difficult.
Anybody.
I think Nigel Williams-Goss could be up to the first team. Very great season with Gonzaga, and he's proven, not just him, but Gonzaga as a whole has kind of proven that they're no longer that overrated one seed coming out of Spokane anymore, as everyone thought. I thought this season, as before, Gonzaga's overrated. They play in the West Coast Conference, whatever. But they're proving themselves. They're finally in a Final Four. Mark Few is finally there. He can cross that off his bucket list, and so now I think you could replace Nigel Williams-Goss with Josh Hart, in my honest opinion.
Okay.
But that's post-tournament too. I'm pretty sure AP didn't really take the tournament too much into consideration. Just looked at regular season, and you look at Villanova. Only 3 losses in the regular season, and it's just hard to go against that.
One name you don't see that's been a household name throughout this tournament and going into the Final Four is Sindarius Thornwell. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, he played for South Carolina. Yeah, okay, he played for South Carolina, but he was the SEC Player of the Year. And he's not even on the third team. I mean, you got somebody from Notre Dame. You got Bonzie Colson from Notre Dame. And I'll even say, being a Wisconsin guy, you got Ethan Happ on the third team. He had a good season, but he kind of hit a wall when teams were doubling down on him, and he was having trouble working out of that. He finally worked out of that and was able to stem the tide. But Sindarius Thornwell, I know a lot of people will argue that he should be on here on one of these teams.
Yeah, I think it's just a judgment that people have against the conferences going into the tournament. Everyone kind of counted out the SEC because, they're a football conference. They only have Kentucky, and that's it. Well, South Carolina is in the Final Four, and you also had Kentucky and Florida in the Elite Eight. And then you look at the Big Ten this year, it's kind of in between, whether Big Ten was having an off year or a good year. It kind of tailed off towards the end. And then it looked as the ACC was the best conference because they had so many teams make the tournament. And you see a little bit more names, ACC names on here rather than SEC or Big Ten.
Are you kind of surprised that Markelle Fultz is a third-team All-American rather than a first- or second-team All-American, considering he is projected to be the number one pick in the draft?
Yeah, but this isn't a mock draft.
And we'll get to our mock draft in a little bit.
This is what they did for their college, and Washington didn't do a whole lot.
9-22, I believe.
Not good. And so I'm honestly surprised to even see him on this All-American team because it just I put a lot of stock into the amount of games you win, and that's how valuable you are to a team, and especially in basketball. You have one good player, you exponentially get better. And just Markelle Fultz, good player, going to be high draft pick, but just couldn't win the game. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the mock draft, but I just can't buy into Fultz. I don't think he should be on there.
Was there anybody that really surprised you that was on there?
Markelle Fultz.
Besides Markelle Fultz?
Not entirely,
or
no.
somebody that might have been left out besides Darius Thornwell?
Not left out, but now looking at it, Lauri Markkanen probably could have been up one more, played in kind of a tough Pac-12 conference this season against Oregon, UCLA. Alonzo Ball, it's hard to buy into Alonzo Ball with everything that's been going on. He's a great player. He knows how to get assists, which is kind of a lost art coming into this new age of basketball that everyone just wants to score. So it's nice to see him get into that, but I don't know. They did the best they could here. You only have so many spots and many good players. There's always going to be criticism you can find in lists like this. Same every week with the AP Top 25. There's something you can just pick apart, and I have very much respect to these guys who pick these because you can never get it right.
Right.
100% right.
Zach saying Nigel Williams-Goss should be a first-team All-American. He was a key contributor to the Zags' success all year, and I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. But, you take a look at it, and it's all subjective. It's all based on what people think and how people contributed to their team. Now, Lonzo Ball, was he the best player on UCLA? He was the third leading scorer. But was he the best all-around player? Probably. Frank Mason, the third. Of course, he was the best player on Kansas, and the best player in the country. Was Josh Jackson a close second? Absolutely. Why wasn't Josh Jackson on the second-team All-American team then? You wonder about that. Caleb Swanigan, he had a great year. And is going to be Big Ten Player of the Year. I don't believe he's been named yet. They haven't named that.
Yeah, they named it.
They did. Okay,
and he was Big Ten Player of the Year. Yeah.
Which was surprising because Nigel Hayes from Wisconsin was the preseason Player of the Year. And
I don't like the preseason ring. It's hard to do that before when they haven't even done anything. It's just based off of last year.
Yeah, and you base it off of experience as well. I mean, Nigel Hayes coming in as a senior, had a great tournament. Don't know if he would have gotten consideration for Player of the Year had they named it after the tournament, but he might have. Dylan Brooks from Oregon, you could say that he helped carry that Oregon team into the tournament, and he should be a first-team All-American. Tyler Dorsey, obviously a good complementary player, but you wonder if Dylan Brooks, is he first-team All-American material? But who would you replace? Justin Jackson obviously was a first-team All-American. Josh Hart, you could probably swap out for anybody on that second team. Like I said, it's all subjective, and it's all based on what you think, how well you think they contributed to their team. I think this is kind of like an MVP of your team type of atmosphere when you get to the All-American picks. But switching gears, we had said we wanted to talk a little bit about the draft. The draft is going to be coming up very soon. It's going to be coming up in June. Yeah, that's real soon. We'll talk about the NFL draft in future shows when we talk about college kids coming out. But everybody's talking about who's going to be the number one pick, who's going to be who's out there, and where these players are going to land, especially when you got LeVar Ball talking about Lonzo Ball wanting to stay with Los Angeles. Now, Lonzo Ball was on ESPN not too long ago, a couple days ago, and he actually made the statement that he's a better ball player than Markelle Fultz. Markelle Fultz, as we said, is going to be the consensus in everybody's mock draft to be the number one pick. But Ball said he knows how to lead a team better. He said, no offense to Markelle, he's a great player, but he says, I feel I'm better than him, to quote him. He says, I think I can lead a team better than him. Obviously, he's a great scorer, he's a great player, so I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think I'm a better all-around player. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that Lonzo's a better all-around player than Fultz?
I mean, I've seen Lonzo Ball play a lot more than Markelle Fultz because he's had more success. He's been on a better team. I don't know if that's because he was surrounded just solely based on better talent or because he actually led a better team.
That shot, though.
I mean, what do you want the kid to say? What do you want him to say? Oh yeah, Markelle Fultz is better than me. He should beat Cesar. He's gonna go ahead. I'm a number 2 pick. I'm behind him. No, you want him to be confident in himself. And if anything, the Ball family is overconfident. But it's just I don't buy into much what he says about himself. I'd rather hear what scouts have to say, what GMs have to say about it, because Markelle Fultz is probably going to say, "Oh, well, I think I'm better than Lonzo Ball," and it's gonna be a war of words that isn't going to get anyone anywhere.
And size-wise, they're very much the same. Fultz is 6'4", Ball is 6'6". Fultz averaged 23.2 points a game, 5.7 rebounds, and 5.9 assists. Ball averaged 7.7 assists per game, the best mark in Division I. Also third leading scorer on UCLA, as we said, 14.6 points a game, but that wasn't about his game. And a lot of people going into this draft will say, well, who makes their team better? And a lot of people will point out to that 7.5, 8 assists a game and will say, you know what, Lonzo really doesn't care about scoring. He'll get his, but he really wants to make his team better, and he's a much better passer than anybody that we've ever seen. And a lot of people, LeVar actually made the comparison to Magic Johnson. I don't think he's that caliber, but I think he can up his game to where he's a caliber of and I saw the comparison today where they compared him to Jason Kidd, not necessarily on the defensive side, but the way he passes the ball and the way he runs the floor. I think he can definitely be a Jason Kidd type point guard or type off guard where he can make his players better.
Yeah, just numbers and visuals to kind of put Lonzo Ball ahead of Fultz here because UCLA won more games than Washington. And as you mentioned, Lonzo Ball likes to pass the ball and likes to get his team involved. And it's ultimately a team game, especially when you get to the level of the NBA. You want a guy who knows how to win. And when you're drafting a guy who didn't even win 10 games in his college season, it's hard to get that winning atmosphere. Ultimately, it's about winning the game.
Yeah.
You don't want some guy to drop 70 points in a loss that Devin Booker did for the Suns last week, because that's not going to win you any Larry O'Brien trophies.
Right.
So you want the guy who knows how to win. So, I would put Lonzo Ball ahead. I'd rather have him than Markelle Fultz.
Okay. Well, according to a lot of these pundits and a lot of these mock drafts, you see Markelle Fultz. I just wanted to make mention too that today Melo Trimble from Maryland, the point guard, is declared himself for the draft. They said he was only a junior. He's been there for what, 8 years?
Yeah,
9 years?
Feels like it.
Man, he's got to be he's going to be the oldest rookie at 29 years old. Also, you have Harry Giles, who is Duke's small forward. He is now projected to go in the first round now that he declared. But you take a look at, I want to take a look at a couple of mock drafts because it's intriguing to me to see some of these names that become household names based on the tournament. You see Markelle Fultz at number 1. Some of these mock drafts actually have Josh Jackson going number 2 to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, would the Los Angeles Lakers actually pass up on LeVar Ball if they had an opportunity to take him?
I don't think so. I think they would.
You think Magic's looking for that kind of spark, that kind of...
Yeah, it's an ultimate match. He grew up in L.A. He's got that L.A. personality. I think he'd be a great fit.
I think his dad's got the L.A. personality. I don't think he's got the personality.
I mean, you grow up in L.A., you have the L.A. personality.
I suppose. But, and I think from what I read an article earlier today saying Luke Walton is a great coach, but he doesn't have that cornerstone player. And I think that... as much as I don't want to play into LeVar Ball's court here, I don't want to boost his ego anymore. I think that Lonzo Ball could be that cornerstone guy. I think he could be that guy that team can build around, and they can gather around him, much like a couple of young players here in Milwaukee that they're building around, like Giannis. He doesn't necessarily have the physical traits of a Giannis, but he definitely has the tools. He's got the mental game, and I think he can really improve that team by being taken second. So it's interesting to see him because obviously they're not going to be played out. Jason Tatum scheduled to go in the first round, the small forward from Duke. De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk from Kentucky expected to go into the lottery. Dennis Smith, who is the NC State point guard, just declared for the draft a couple days ago. He's expected to go in the lottery as well. And one of those guys that you see, Lauri Markkanen, you said he doesn't necessarily need to be. He needs to be a little bit higher on the list. He's projected. He's a 7-footer projected to go in the lottery. So I mean, anybody that you see that in a top 14, because I'm taking this from a couple of different sources here. Taking all of these international guys out of it, is there somebody in the top 14 in the lottery that you see that isn't there that maybe should be?
I feel like Lauri Markkanen's a little bit too high.
Okay.
I think he doesn't have the size. He's got the length to be in the NBA, but not necessarily the size. He's kind of a small 7 foot, if that is a possibility. And I mean, we saw in the Elite Eight matchup, or whatever matchup against Xavier, Sweet 16, was they never gave him the ball in the last 5 minutes of the game. I don't know if that was just Alonzo Trier being selfish and wanted to take over the game himself, or they just didn't have full trust in Lauri Markkanen to take over that game and get the lead back.
Right.
So it's just kind of a trust thing you have to see within these teams.
Now, there are some mock drafts that have Justin Jackson actually declaring. He hasn't officially declared yet, and obviously can't until after he plays this thing out. I would assume that he'd come out into the draft. Now, one mock draft has him going in the second round. One mock draft has him going late in the first round. Does he really last that long? A guy with his tools and his skill set, does he really last till the end of the first, beginning of the second round?
I think so. Once again, he's too small. He's very, very young. He's got a lot to learn. I think one more year at KU under Bill Self is going to make Josh Jackson a good player.
Justin Jackson.
We're talking about Justin Jackson. This is getting confusing here. Yeah, okay.
Well, let's talk.
Justin Jackson, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got the athleticism, really just the way he improved from last season, even just in 1 year. I mean, he wouldn't hurt from having an extra year with North Carolina, but I mean, I'm sure he wants to cash in on his opportunity. His stock is as high as it has been in his entire life. So
right.
He's not going to lose anything either way.
It's kind of strike while the iron is hot type of thing.
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
all these guys coming into the draft that are early entrants, and you want to make sure that they cash in while they can. One guy that we have talked about, Sindarius Thornwell, in a couple of mock drafts, all the way to the middle of the second round, maybe even the end of the second round. Some people don't even have him projecting to go in the draft, and that to me is a shock because he's had a fantastic season. He's had an absolutely unbelievable tournament. Doesn't the tournament count when you talk about mock drafts? Doesn't that raise your stock just a little bit?
It should. It definitely should. But, I mean, he wasn't as big as in the spotlight as he was before the tournament. And so it's now people are starting to pay attention, even though they should have paid attention beforehand. Right. It's just the collectiveness of counting off SEC basketball and South Carolina basketball. I'm sure there's a few, but not too many NBA scouts going to just a South Carolina Vanderbilt game to check out Sindarius Thornwell. But now after this tournament, if he would have had this last year and gone back to South Carolina,
right,
then he'd get a lot more attention from scouts.
Zach asking if Nigel Williams-Goss could be a potential first-round pick if he does declare. Yeah, I think he could, but I see him more in the early second round.
Yeah, potential is the big key word.
Yeah,
there.
I mean he's only a junior. Who knows if he's actually going to come out? I would think he would because he's got that pedigree right now. One guy that I was really surprised, we talked about him, the AP Player of the Year, Frank Mason. In one of these mock drafts, they have him going to the 48th pick, and that's to our beloved Milwaukee Bucks, which would be fantastic because that would give the Bucks another point guard. But the AP Player of the Year falling all the way down to the mid-second round, where his contract, we know contracts in the second round are not guaranteed. So does that surprise you at all?
No, not really. Not just because I don't like KU, but there's a reason why he's been there at KU as long as he has, and not declared for the NBA. And so he's short. He can control the ball, but it's just NBA is a whole different ball game, literally. And so it just, I can see it. I definitely can.
A lot of big men going in the lottery, and right after we talked about Harry Giles from Duke projected to go into the lottery now. You got Jared Allen from Texas, Bam Adebayo from Kentucky, 6'10", Isaiah Hartenstein from Germany, he's coming out, he's 6'11". John Collins from Wake Forest, Ivan Robb from California. A lot of these guys 6'10", 6'11", 7 foot, banking on the fact that hopefully they'll play a tough inside game. Much like Justin Patton from Creighton, he's a 7-footer. They're banking on, and that's what the NBA draft is. It's a lot of potential. What are you going to do for me a year, 2, 3 years down the road?
Yeah, and even with the emergence of the D League, they're still drafting for 2-3 years down the road, and it's getting tougher and tougher to draft someone that is going to have an instant, really, role on the team where there's a spot wide open, just as you see in football where it's wide open, you got to draft to this spot. Doesn't happen as much as the NBA, and so the D League is becoming more popular to develop more players, get them ready for the game. They kind of just use it as a buffer between the college game and the NBA. So it's starting to get more like baseball and hockey, where you draft for the future and not just the upcoming season.
Do you think there should be an age limit for the? Do you agree that the kids shouldn't be able to come out of high school, or do you think the age limit should be raised a little bit for the draft?
I mean, if they do change it, they should raise it to kind of like what baseball does. I like what the MLB does, where you can either choose to go to the draft right out of high school, or if you're going to go to college, you got to go for 2-3 years.
Right.
And so you give them the choice right then and there. So it's not excluding anyone right away, so they just know that they're going one and done to the tournament or to the NBA. But then to the people who want to get developed, it keeps them there and allows them to stay with the college program, so they're not just going to college for not even going to college, going to play basketball at a college.
Oh, who was it that said, "I didn't come here to play college, I came here to play basketball"? I forget who.
No, that was Cardell Jones.
Jones, that's right.
We didn't come here to play no school.
We came here to play football.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that as Lonzo Ball, too, because he said, "Yep, I'm out of here. I'm not
here."
It's
quick that way. The post-game press conference after he gets eliminated.
He's like, "I'm going. I'm going to the NBA," and it's like, professors don't expect to see me in class tomorrow because I'm not going to be there because I'm just going to ride this out until June. So it's just going to be interesting to see what happens in this draft. But moving away from the draft, we got to kind of wrap things up here as we're moving towards the end of our show. Just a reminder, this coming Monday, we will have a special national championship edition of the show. We will bring back our panelists, Christian Heimel, Dom Garrett, and Jeff Childs. They're going to be coming back on to talk about the national championship, talk about the Final Four games, and get their predictions as well. And then we will see what we can do as far as next Monday. We're talking about possibly doing something special next Monday during the game, or at halftime of the game. If we have that, we'll bring that to you. And also next Wednesday, we're going to be in our regular time slot, breaking down the national championship game and looking forward to the year ahead. But what are you most excited for this weekend? What matchup intrigues you the most? What is it that you see coming out of this weekend, and what's your prediction?
Well, I'm excited to see the Cinderella team in South Carolina. Everyone loves them. You got Frank Martin, unbelievably, coming from K-State, leaving on semi-bad terms, but going to a Final Four. And it's good to see him there. It's good to see 7 seed making it that far. But I'd like to see how they match up against Gonzaga here. They beat Arizona, who was my championship pick, not just Final Four, but championship. And They beat Xavier. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. They beat Xavier, who beat my championship pick. So then they just have a huge inside game with everyone they have there, and I can't see them lose. I'm finally buying into Gonzaga after I picked my bracket, but I'm finally buying into them. But it's hard to pick against that Cinderella team. From every game they've really been an underdog and just proved everyone wrong. Starting with Duke, even Marquette in my case, because I picked Marquette. But
a lot of people in this area picked Marquette.
Yeah, they did. But it's going to be very interesting to see. But I still think Gonzaga will go away with this one, and it's going to be tough. But they'll beat North Carolina for their first national championship.
Interesting. I just don't see South Carolina being able to match up with Gonzaga inside, and I think Gonzaga is going to exploit that quite a bit. And I think they're going to get a lot of points in the paint. I think their bench is a little bit deeper than South Carolina's, even though they got P.J. Dozier and some other starters that are very, very good. I just don't think they have the depth, especially if they get into foul trouble. I think Gonzaga's got a lot more coming off the bench, and I see them winning this one. Not easily, because Carolina's defense is just absolutely phenomenal, and they've held good teams, like a Florida team, to 31% in the second half, and they didn't make a three-pointer in the second half. But that's the thing is Gonzaga's not a perimeter team. Gonzaga is an inside ball club, and they're not a perimeter shooting team. So that's something that South Carolina is going to have to adjust to. I see Gonzaga winning this one fairly easily, probably I'm guessing by about 8 or 9 points. South Carolina, it's been a good run. I love the underdog story. I love the Cinderella teams, but unfortunately I can't see them moving on. Now, when it comes to Oregon and UNC, this is going to be a fun game to watch because there's going to be points upon points upon points upon points upon points. You got Tyler Dorsey, Dylan Brooks. You got Justin Jackson. You have Joel Berry. You have just a lot of you have good coaches. Dana Altman's a great coach. Roy Williams, as we talked about on Monday with Ian DeMars, probably the third best coach in the country right now behind Gino Auriemma and Mike Krzyzewski. Okay, been there, done that, won a couple national championships. I just think that they made it this far. Oregon, I think, is happy to be here. I think UNC has a lot of stuff on their mind yet, and they got that big chip on their shoulder, and I don't see them losing to Oregon, getting all this way and then coming back and losing to Oregon. So I see UNC winning that one. It's going to be a tight game. It's going to be a fast-paced game. It's going to be fun to watch. I think there's going to be a lot of fouls in that one, but I think there's also going to be a lot of points. I think it's going to be UNC and Gonzaga, and out of that one, I have to pick UNC just because of the experience factor. I think, Gonzaga, love him to death, love Mark Few, love the way he coaches. Unfortunately for them, they just haven't been there. They haven't been to the big dance yet. UNC, man, Roy Williams has been there how many times? He's been there
last year.
Yeah, and they were there last year, so they know what to expect. When you come out and the national championship is on Monday night, and you're in front of 70 million people watching worldwide, and you get that into your head and the bright lights, that's going to overwhelm some people. Whereas I think for North Carolina, they're just going to be like, oh, it's just another game. We got to go out and we got to prove that we should have won last year. So I think it's going to be North Carolina over Gonzaga, and unfortunately for Gonzaga, they're going to end their tournament run with a loss. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see, and we're going to make sure we
impatiently wait.
Yeah, impatiently wait.
We'll add that in there.
I mean, we're still 3 days away from Saturday, so it's kind of one of those things where you gear up, and you just can't wait anymore. And this time of year has been the greatest time of year. It's been fun doing the shows with you. It's been fun doing the shows without you, even though I wish you would have been here. It's been awesome. It's been great because of those intriguing matchups, because of those things that you see, those stories that always come out of this tournament, those feel-good stories. It's not just basketball; it's life that these people talk about, and it's just one of those things that is just fantastic. I love it. It's the greatest time of year. Zach says no East Coast bias with you guys. Good to see some people picking the Zags. Yeah, we don't. We live in the Midwest, so we're we're bi-coastal right now.
We're neutral as far as geography
we're
goes.
Switzerland when it comes to the coast. I lived on the East Coast and on the West Coast, so I can say, I have no preference whatsoever, although I do like the weather a little bit better on the West Coast. And Tracer saying that I agree with Ryan when we were talking about the...
That's one.
When we were talking,
about one to the Army.
Absolutely, talking about the age of the guys coming out and whether or not there should be a little bit more of an age range. But man, these hours go by so quick. That we get to talking, and it's like, man, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. But we have our predictions. We hope you make your predictions. We hope to have those predictions come true, at least a couple of us that are still in some brackets. Unfortunately for us, we're not. Just a reminder once again about Monday's special show, special edition coming on Monday. Dom Garrett, Jeff Childs, Christian Heimel, all said they're in. We're looking forward to having you guys. That panel that came on at the beginning of our show and broke down the entire bracket. We're going to be talking about the final game of this bracket, and we're going to be going back and forth, and it's just going to be absolutely fantastic. We're excited. We invite you to join us. Ryan, if people want to follow you on social media, where can they go?
You go to my Twitter page, at Ryan Thies. Last name spelled Thies.
Yes, don't spell it wrong or his mom will yell at you.
I before E, except after C.
H.
Don't ever forget that. Yep, there you go. But that's where most of my sports news goes.
True story, though. I did spell your name wrong on Facebook, and your mom kind of yelled at me.
On
I felt bad.
my credential to the March Madness games that are here in Milwaukee, it was spelled EIS. So.
Well, and EIS here in Wisconsin is Tice. Yeah. So, Thies, Tice, I got it now. If you want to follow me, you can check out my Facebook page. You'll see a picture of me and my lovely wife. Or you can follow me on Twitter, Barry Nelson WI, at Barry Nelson WI. You can follow me. I troll Twitter and Facebook all the time, and we have fun. We put our sports news out there as well. So we hope you had fun this hour. We certainly had fun. We hope you enjoy the games on Saturday, and once again, join us on Monday for a special edition, one final special edition of College Road Trip. For Ryan Thies, our producers and engineers, Baxter Colburn and David Bobke, we thank you so much for joining us. We will see you on Monday. Good night, everybody.